Welcome back, everybody. The recent withdrawal of U.S. troops from Syria has left the Kurdish people who live there feeling betrayed and frightened. It is an estimated more than 250,000 Kurds who've already fled from their homes, many of those children, and hundreds have been killed in the fighting. There's much we as Americans do not know about the Kurdish people, from their history to their contributions fighting alongside the U.S. against ISIS, and even about the Kurdish community here in the Seattle area and across the U.S. Kurdish American activist Yvonne Rafik Shwani, who has worked with the United Nations and the U.S. Agency for International Development, is here to help us better understand. How are you?
I'm good.
How are you coping? Tell us a bit about the local Kurdish community and how people are feeling about the news that's going on.
People are not really feeling well at all. They are deeply saddened by the President Trump's decision to withdraw from Syria and then leaving the people at the mercy of the Turkish military attacks and all the militia group affiliated with ISIS, which so far caused the killing of more than 300 people, thousands of injured people, and then close to 300,000 displaced. All
Where
over
are those
Syria.
people going?
Some of them are really passing, the border and going to the Iraqi region, the Kurdistan region of Iraq. But then they are really cornered from all sides, and some of them just prefer to stay, because there is no really way out.
Don't know what to do. We put a map up here, and I want you to help us understand. There are Kurdish people who live in Turkey, who live in Iraq, who live in Iran, who live in Syria, and there, obviously are people around the world. And this is a large group, the largest group of stateless people in the world. How many Kurds are there?
Unfortunately, there are not really accurate census that will show the accurate number of the Kurdish population in the world. But as this most recent, let's say, division shows that we are a population of close to 50 million people being divided in 1923, through Lausanne Treaty by English, let's say, English power at that point. And we were distributed among Syria, Iraq, Iran, and Turkey. And since then, there have been, struggle. There have been, revolutions, one after one, in order just to get our basic rights. For example, in Turkey, people were not allowed to talk in Kurdish language. It was just until recent years that they have allowed that. No naming of Kurdish names at all. So complete humiliation, neglecting them and even calling them the Turks of the mountains. So that's how we have been really dealing. And even in Iraq, we gone through many persecution campaigns. In Iran, the same. Still, just asking for our basic human rights will be considered and replied by execution. And in Syria, in 2011, the opportunity came, for this population in order to be recognized, and they have started this really unique model of governance, by allowing all the ethnic groups, to take and participate in running, their administration, but at the same time forming this really unique military model that women is really fighting side by side with men, and they are really totally equal. So they are co-leading, from A to Z.
This is so interesting to me. So just to set the scene, also this predominantly Muslim Kurds are. They speak Arabic and Kurdish dialects, and the society has women so integrated into it that they're a large part of the actual fighting forces. Has that been a notable feature of Kurdish society over the decades since 1923 and afterwards, as you guys have struggled to get some sort of homeland?
Yeah, if you go back throughout history, you see that Kurdish women, they really have a great role in ruling their communities and their society, but because of the persecution and also some religious things that they were not really part of, that role throughout history was bumped by not allowing her to be that kind of full voice. But with the recent revelation which started in Turkey and then now in northern part of Syria, they have this model that women is everything. If you want to build really a good healthy society fighting all forms of corrupt, women need to lead side by side with women. And it's not just by telling that just in words. There is actually practical practice of that. So
I think that's so interesting to understand the community itself. Now, recently you were part of a rally here in Seattle, sort of trying to help people understand. And I think we've talked about the Kurds over the years, you know, years and years ago, fleeing Iraq, things now going on, and yet people stopped you at this rally to say, tell me more, right? We don't know very much.
Yeah, it was really an interesting one. It was a big rally, and we have many American people who came in to support. They know about the cause, and they have really their full support for the population as well as for what they can do in terms of helping people overseas. We had people coming and saying, why you are doing this? You are mentioning Erdogan, the president of Turkey, Trump, what's going on? And then there came the education part. There, I realized that there are too many people, in our state, maybe in even other states, that are really completely ignorant about, who we are, what's our issue, what's our cause, and then what's the current situation in northern Syria. So many of them are just saying that this is your war, this is your fight, we need our troops to be back, but that's not the reality. The Kurdish fighters really stood for the entire humanity and world by fighting ISIS, defeating ISIS, and for that they have, that cost them 13,000 lives.
Which is just amazing, 13,000 lives to take back a territory about the size of Portugal, which was very much in the U.S. interest. You just came back from a conference in the Netherlands, an emergency conference for Kurdish activists, and I should say you immigrated to the U.S. in 2012, right? And congratulations on your American citizenship and having voted in your first election as well, and raising your family here. At the conference, what was the thrust of what you think will happen now that the U.S. troops are largely out of Syria?
Yeah, in terms of politics, we cannot really control anything. Many politicians within U.S., they have really declared their support for the Kurdish people, but you see that it's just only on the social media, to the media, but there is not really actual steps. Some of them, yes, they have brought the co-lead, for the northern Syria, let's say, entity to speak at the Congress and talking about what they have done. How they were really happy with the U.S. support, because what really U.S. did on the ground was providing air cover and then some logistics. So there was not really a real fight for the troops, but they were there just to telling the Turkey not to trespass. We will not allow you to harm the people.
And that was a very effective alliance.
Exactly.
And as you've said to me, despite what's happened, Kurdish people still feel quite an allegiance to America.
Yeah, but in that Congress, we really decided that at least we can, work in many areas in terms of providing humanitarian aid, through donating. There is the Kurdish Red Cross, Heva Sore Kurdistan, that they have official website, and they're the one on the ground providing help for the injured people, for families, with basic needs, with everything. And then also taking serious steps towards recognizing what Turkey has been doing to the civilian and bombing them by prohibited weapons as a genocide. Throughout history, many things to happen to us, but we didn't really have that kind of actual plan that we need to knock the door of the big international organizations, asking them, hey, we have all this data and information, how we can recognize what happened to us as a genocide. So we are just right now working on the diplomacy and the humanitarian piece of work that we can do.
I am so glad, and I'm so glad to know we have a Kurdish community here, and that our viewers are able to learn more from you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
It was lovely to have you here. For more information on ways to help Kurdish refugees and refugees in general, we've linked resources for you on our website. We'll have more historical information as well.